All right, my name is Tabar. We're back with Sober Living, another episode. I want to welcome Brady Burch to our Sober Living group, and he's going to give us a story about what helped him with Sober Living and how he became a part of the Sober Living family.
I think some of the first things that I can remember when drugs were a problem were when I was probably 15 or 16, and I had a close friend that was watching some kids, and he was accidentally shot in the stomach and received a $160,000 settlement for it, and he literally spent all his money on drugs. We bought kilos of cocaine and alcohol, and before that, I think all we ever did is really, we drink every now and then. Kids back in the 90s were pretty rebellious, but I feel like after he did all that, we started using cocaine all the time and doing harder drugs, and that was the point when I believe things really got out of control. We all spent, there was 4 of us in our little group, and we spent a lot of years together, and that's pretty much all we did. There's no cell phones, no way to keep track of everybody, so we'd always just hang out at people's houses, get high, get drunk, and and it just never stopped. And I believe in the late 90s, whenever meth was getting real bad, we hung around a lot of the older crowds, so we all started cooking dope, making dope, and it pretty much got worse from there. And the early 2000s, we'd all lost touch, but I stayed around, and I sold dope, cooked dope through the early 2000s, and in 2005, after being in and out of jail quite a few times, I went to prison in Oklahoma, where I spent 6.5 years for possessing chemicals to manufacture methamphetamines. And I spent 6 years in there.
What prison did you go to?
Went to a lot of them up there. I started out in Lawton, which was one of the biggest prisons up there. Got in trouble for fighting, almost killed somebody actually. And then I got sent to higher security, where I stayed there. And the first 2 years I was there, it was all trouble. I smoked weed, fought the whole time, and got involved with gangs and all that stuff. And I think it was right before I left there, I actually started doing good, started getting some of my days back, and I decided I was going. And I started going. It was funny. I started going to these little classes just to get out of my cell, because where I was at was a troublemaker unit, and there was nothing to do. So I started going to these classes, and they were, some of them were drug rehab classes, but they were all, I think they were called New Beginnings. They were a faith-based course, and so I started going to that, and I actually made a commitment with myself that I was going to stay clean, not do anything, not get in any trouble from there on out. And so, the next 4 years go by, and I stayed out of trouble, started doing really, really, really good, and I actually got out there. Stayed in Oklahoma. I decided I was never going to come back to Texas, and I stayed up there with a really good job. I reconnected with an old girlfriend, and we ended up getting married and having 3 kids up there, and it was great. And I just drank every now and then, and that was it. No weed, no hard drugs or nothing. And one day we decided to move back to Texas, and moved back here with no job or nothing. I pulled out the 401k, we moved back down here, and I got a job in the oil field, and they did a drug test, which really wasn't nothing at the time. I'd been saying that I wanted to smoke weed here and there, so drinking got worse, smoking weed a little bit here and there, and over the next few years I actually ended up relapsing on meth a couple times. And so later on, I think it was like 2017, been having a little bit of problem in the marriage, so I just, on the side, I went and got a little bit of meth, which wasn't a little bit, it was a quarter ounce, but, I started using it every now and then and trying to keep my job, and, and then my ex-wife finds out. She left early 2018, and, when she left, she took the kids and everything, and by then I was using it pretty regularly, but she really didn't even know. She knew something was wrong. We'd grown apart, and so anyways, she took the kid, and then pretty much that was the start of the downfall, the last downfall. You know, the first one was before I went to prison when everything was really bad, but you know, this one, 2018 through that summer, I started using a lot. I actually started buying, you know, ounces and selling it, and in December, my dad passed away, which he was, you know, I was really close with my dad, and it really was the cliff that I fell off of as far as addiction goes.
So a little bit about your dad, like what was the relationship with your dad?
Oh, I mean, like, I'm adopted, so, you know, he couldn't have kids, so I was always his little baby boy, always. You know, he's always helping me out. You know, he never said no to anything. You know, I grew up in a middle class, you know, family, and you know, had all the benefits of being, you know, adopted and a single child. So I was spoiled brat, and you know, but you know, he loved me to death. You know, he never said no. He helped me when I didn't have money for bills. You know, he was always there. You know, he was always somebody for me to lean on. You know, even when in my addiction, all the times I went to jail and rehab and everything. And yeah, when he passed away 2 days before Christmas, 2018, you know, I didn't, being in my addiction, you know, having really nothing to lean on, you know, I fell apart. You know, I started using even more. You know, he left me some money. I was gone through all the money in about a month. You know, I paid rent for 6 months, and the rest of it, I bought drugs and didn't process it right. And then, you know, at that point, I was married, lost the marriage, lost my kids. I had 3 cars, lost the cars. I was buying a house, lost that. You know, you can't hit much more of a rock bottom than that. You know, and I drug that through all the way through 2019. You know, bounced from a few houses. I went to a lady, and you know, everybody knows her as Brady Cook. You know, I started working for her. She gave me a place to stay. You know, fixed that house up. She gave me another house, and at that point, you know, I just quit working. I quit caring. You know, I was basically homeless. The house didn't have electricity. You know, it didn't have water. You know, I quit talking to her, and you know, just got back to the old thing. You know, I started going down to Fort Worth, picking up dope from some of the cartel guys down there for a friend of mine, because she didn't know where to get it. And you know, at that point, I was bringing, you know, a couple pounds home every week. And then you know, 2019 ended. You know, there was a whole COVID thing going on. You know, nobody was really going anywhere. And I remember that first day, the second, I think it was January 2nd, I told the girl I was getting it for, I said, you know, this is going to be my bounce back here. You know, I'm getting real tired of living like this. You know, I've got to get my kids back. And so I'd try to get clean. I'd stay clean a little bit. You know, I'd fall off. And, you know, I was going to the mission twice a day to get food. You know, I had to swallow my pride. I couldn't afford to eat. So I was going up there getting food, the pantries and all that, you know, hanging out on the streets, you know, because I was never at home. There wasn't really a home to be at. And I remember, I think it was May, I got an eviction notice from the lady from Brady Cook. And it was June 5th, I was going to get all the way evicted. You know, you get so many warnings anyway. Coming up to that point, I packed what things I could keep for myself, you know, in case I was on those, you know, all the way on the street. You know, I didn't have anywhere to go. And so that day, they came that morning. I had all my stuff already moved outside that I wanted to keep. You know, they threw everything outside like they always do. And there I was sitting. It was June 5th, 2020. And you know, I called the guy that I got arrested with on those charges for Oklahoma. And he'd actually got out and stayed clean. You know, he did 9 years on it. He got out, stayed clean. Had been going to AA for a long time. And I called him up. And I asked him, hey, can you give me a ride to go take some of my stuff over to, you know, my dad's ex-girlfriend. You know, we were still talking. I asked her if I could keep my stuff there, and she said, yeah. So he got off work about 5:30 that evening, and he came pick me up and took my stuff over there. And at the time, it was another girl that was running Sober Living. She's not there now, but I knew her. And he was like, well, we can't drive around all day. You got to go somewhere. And at first I was like, well, I guess I go to the mission. And he's like, well, do you want to go to Sober Living? And so he called Misty, and you know, that was pretty much the end of that. And another thing I forgot to share, I also remember, I think it was the first 2020. I think it was March, or it might have been February. I remember saying a little prayer. It was the same prayer. It was the same prayer that got me in prison. And I say that because when I prayed it in 2005 before I went to prison, I had to say, God, I want out of this life. You know, I don't want to do this anymore, whatever it takes. And that was March 19th. I remember the day, March 19th, 2005. And I was out in the middle of a field in Oklahoma still in hydrous ammonia, and we'd been doing it every single day. When I got arrested, I had like 15 grand in my pocket, and strung out, looked like a little meth head with a bunch of money in my pocket. It was a mess. But I remember saying that, and then March 31st, I get picked up for that, and 3 weeks later I'm in prison. You don't ever hear that, from court to getting arrested to prison in 3 weeks. And then that's where I spent 6 years, and it did change me. It did change me until all that other stuff happened, where I fell off the second time. Well, this time, I said, don't. I said, I want to get out of this life. I can't do it anymore. I want everything I had before, but I don't want to go to prison. And I was like, I'll do whatever it takes, And I said some other things. It was a pretty long prayer, and I sat there, I was crying for a little while. And, it was funny how it all happened. And then we come up to June, and and I fully committed myself by then. I was like, well, I want to be clean. If I get that opportunity, I'm going to take it. And when I went to sober living, I remember the weeks before I actually went there, on Facebook, I would see all these pictures of my friends that were already in sober living. And there's people that I was on the street with just weeks before, and they're in there and they're all talking about how great it is and how good they're doing. And I was like, man, I'm going to do that. And so when I finally got there, I had a couple friends there, and I remember that first night I went there, I was still high, and I didn't have nothing but a blanket for a pillow, or a coat for a pillow, a coat for a blanket. And I wake up that next morning, and they're all right there in my face, like, hey, let's go out and do stuff, and we're going to go garage selling, and then we're going to go do some stuff at the office. And I was like, wow, okay. And it just took off from there. And that night we went to something, and I can't remember what it was, but I know that Sunday we went to Compassion Church, and a girl that I knew from the streets, where she was actually singing for the worship team, and I was crying like a little baby, and it was crazy. And I started going to these meetings, and I think I went to something like 200 meetings in a row in the days, 200 days in a row, and I got a sponsor, and all that stuff that they want you to do. And I was like a little superstar. I went to all the meetings. I went to everything. I held the people accountable, and at that time it was still a young program, but it still had the same dynamic it does now. It's people loving on each other, and growing together, and helping people leave one life behind and lead you to a new life. It's crazy, but now. Looking back, I was there for 6 months, and I transitioned out, and I got my own place. And I just never really stopped going. I was like, even now, I'm always up here, helping these guys out, and it's obvious that without that opportunity, like I said, that my other choice was going to the mission. There's no telling where I'd ended up, and it wouldn't be where I'm at now. These guys, they provide a lot of resources to help people in our situation.
If you can look at your old self, what would you tell your old self?
Listen to what people that are older than you tell you.
Right. And what would you tell someone that's out there that's suffering, that don't know where to go, what to look for, how to change? Some of the same things that you used to fight with yourself about. What would you tell that person, how to overcome some of those obstacles?
I would say this, and I know it's harsh, I'd say stop making excuses. Like, if you're in a bad place, and you think that just because all of us are been sober a while, that we don't really care about them, that's not the truth. We deeply care about people that are out there. That's kind of our whole mission in life, is to reach back in to grab people from the mud and bring them out. You know what I mean? I was there, and I was going to the mission to eat. I was out there with the people that were in the same shoes, and I know what it's like. Like, I know what it's like every day to not know what you're going to do, to wish that you had your old life back, or wish you had a better life, and the only way to make that happen is to put a foot before the other one, is to actually reach out for help, to just say, hey, I can't do this anymore, what do I do? And it's all it takes. Just one time, just call, anybody that's clean, or anybody that knows anybody that's in sober living or been there or a part of it. We're all more than happy to stop what we're doing and help.
Another question I was thinking of. And what are some of the resources that that people can reach out to besides sober living if they is there other outreach?
Yeah. The first thing I tell everybody is always the first thing out of my mouth is to catch a meeting, no matter what it is, whether it's AA, NA. There's multiple meetings all over town, and they're all welcome anybody. I mean, you can go in there high as a kite, and they're going to love on you, and they're going to help you, and they're going to want to do whatever it takes to make sure you stay clean or get clean. Compassion Church, Hope Center. You could literally go to a police officer and ask them, and they'll tell you.
Right.
I mean, they'll tell you, because there's so many resources now that there's no way that if somebody wants help, they should be able to get it.
And since you've been in sober living, what is one of the main things that you like about sober living that's so different from other rehab or addiction places that you have been to that they can look for help?
Because they don't judge anybody. It doesn't matter. A lot of these places, they want to shove the Bible down your throat, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like Jesus was the reason. That was the last thing I tried and the first thing that worked for me. But they don't judge you. They'll accept you however you are, and they don't care about any bad situation in your life, good situation. They just want to help.
Right.
Yep.
Well, thank you, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
On the show, and I appreciate if you keep us updated and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
That way that we can continue to share your story with others, and we look forward to your story saving someone else's life and helping them.
I hope it does.
Find direction to sober living also, because this is the place I witnessed over the weekend. So many lives being saved and turning to Christ and turning to sober living, and just asking for.
It's amazing.
And this is one place that I've seen miracles happen.
That's one of the things that keeps us going. Like when you're from the life that we were at, and you see somebody who's been in the dark for so long, you see them light up. See, I'm almost getting cried right now. When you see them light up, for the first time in years, it does something.
Yeah. Thank you. And this is another episode with Sober Living. Signing off.